I want to look at youth training and what's going on in today's sort of maybe global realm of youth training and some of the things that I'm seeing and some of the trends that I'm hearing about from other coaches and talking to not just coaches around Victoria, but across Canada, in the States, and over in Europe, Australia. Youth athletes today are training very intensely and very focused. There's a lot, as certain sports are more guilty of this than others, but youth athletes are tending to train and specialize early, meaning that they're focused on one particular sport and just training that sport over and over and over and over again. In the hopes that, I'm assuming, that they become professional athletes or get picked up by an academy, a youth academy for, say, soccer, or get that college scholarship that they want for soccer or football or ice hockey. Those are sort of the big ones that we see. Basketball also is pretty big in North America, and in baseball even as well. Youth athletes are tending to spend most of their time and energy on particular skills. Now, I'm not saying that learning your sport is not important. Obviously, it's very important. However, when you're spending 12 months of the year learning that sport or playing that sport or participating in that sport, that is beyond excessive. For example, I work with some soccer athletes that play in a soccer academy, that play on outside teams, that play for their school team. Some of these kids are playing on 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 different teams. Now, when you look at that, some of these kids are practicing 3 times a day, or they'll have 2 practices in a day and a game. And these kids are anywhere from, say, 13, 14 years old up to 17, 18 years old. These kids are playing more hours, practicing more hours than academy teams, like professional academy teams in Europe or pro academy teams, even in North America. They're playing and practicing more than professionals. There's Weightlifting Canada actually has a very good YTP or yearly training plan and kind of not YTP, sorry, LTAD, a long-term athlete development plan. I would say that our high school athletes are somewhere in here, depending on their age and their experience. But in the fundamentals model, cycling uses this a little bit as well. But in the fundamentals model, kids are playing, and that's up to like 10 years old roughly, maybe 10 to 12 years old. These kids are playing ideally across a year like 3 to 4 sort of main sports, but it's all play. It's focused on play and movement, like running, jumping, throwing, catching, landing. Those sorts of fundamental skills they're developing over time, and then when they get to learn to train, they're still playing 2, 3 sort of main sports, but they play other sports as well. But those are kind of the focus, and that's in that sort of could be like 11 to say 15-year-old range. You've got training to train, and again, this is really loose because all of this is dependent on training age. It's not biological age, which the training age is going to be how many years that they've been training. So when you look at sports, as how long have they been playing sports or their particular sport? So a particular sport, but you've learned all these sort of fundamental skills and movement patterns, and you've developed physiologically over time to be a well-rounded athlete, where what we're seeing now is kids are not doing this. They're just focused on one particular sport, and it's just the same pattern over and over and over and over again. And these kids are developing traumatic injuries, ACL tears, hamstring strains or tears, quad strains, double quad strains, hip flexor strains. Like these are things that I never even heard of until I got into college and tore my hamstring due to overtraining. But my point is that kids these days need to specialize less and need to adapt to more stimuli. If we just play soccer, for example, what are the main things that a soccer player is going to do in practice? Because they're typically not going to strength train. So what are they going to do? You're going to run, probably long distance. Coach is going to tell you to go and run 10Ks to get in soccer shape. So good. Run slow. Maybe some jumping in practice for headers. Probably not going to focus much on that. You'll have kicking. There's no throwing. I mean, you've got to throw in, but that's not really much of, like, you're not learning to throw. You're not learning the mechanics of stepping and throwing. One thing I see that's the multi-sport athletes are very well coordinated when it comes to different movements, and even if they're soccer players mainly, but then say we play a different sport for cross training, maybe ultimate frisbee, maybe we play basketball, or handball is another good one. You watch these kids and they know throwing, but they've got spatial awareness from playing soccer, so they understand offense, defense, where to be on the court. But their throwing mechanics are a lot better. If we look at cyclists, for example, or another sort of endurance-based sport where they just, like rowing, they'll only focus on that. And then you get them to do other things outside of that. A coach hires someone like myself, a strength and conditioning coach or a performance specialist, to come in and work with the athletes. So we're going to warm up and we're going to play games and we're going to do something away from their sport as much as possible. And then that way I can really see, and it's very evident, who has played other sports and who hasn't. So my challenge to coaches and athletes is to think about what you're doing in training and where are the gaps. What are you doing? What are you missing in your training? You know, are you doing much throwing? Are you doing much jumping or landing or catching? Skills outside of your sport. Look at your overall training plan throughout the year. Make sure to take time to develop those sorts of skills. If you're playing on 2 or 3 different teams for one single sport all year, I think it's time to reevaluate what you're doing and really look at, is there something else that I can do for cross training that's different? Can I cut one of these teams and maybe do some strength training? Maybe I hire somebody, or maybe I look for a plan or a coach that can help me. For example, I do a lot of online coaching with athletes, youth athletes and adult athletes. Why not look for a program that incorporates these sorts of things? You know, fill the gaps in your training so that you're a better athlete, a more well-rounded athlete, and this is going to help to reduce your risk of injury, make you a more robust and durable player so that you don't have to sit out like certain athletes with load management issues, because you are a durable, robust athlete. And that requires that you train in different planes and different patterns than what you commonly train in your sport. So I'm going to stop the rant there. If you have more questions or comments, please comment below or shoot me a message, DM on Instagram or on Facebook. Check us out at SPD Mechanics on both Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, stay tuned for that exciting news coming later this week. Have a good week.